Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our global audience, depending on your location. On behalf of EURAXESS North America and Simon Fraser University, I would like to welcome you to the second and final day of European Research Days. My name is Jackson Howard, and I am the regional representative for EURAXESS North America, and I will be your MC today. So following SFU's lead yesterday, we would like to acknowledge the people of Nacotchtank, or the Anacostans, on whose traditional territories our office resides in Washington, D.C. And using the same format as yesterday, over the next 3 hours, we'll be hearing from speakers in Europe and in Canada, who will share important information on funding mechanisms and programs to support transatlantic collaboration. Our sessions today will take place in two sections of our Hop-In platform. The first two sessions are being hosted here on the main stage, while the parallel sessions where you can interact with the speakers and ask further questions will be hosted under the Session tab. You can see the navigation icons on the left side of your screen. And finally, under the Reception tab, you'll find a copy of today's agenda, along with a link to the bios for all the speakers. And then a little bit of housekeeping before we proceed. We invite you to ask questions at any point during the session throughout the chat box to your right. Once we move to the parallel sessions towards the end of the event, you will have a chance to interact directly with the speakers and use your webcam and mic, or continue to submit via the chat box there as well. But in these first two sessions, we ask that your questions be posed in writing in the chat. These two sessions are hosted on the main stage and will be recorded and made available to all registered participants after the event is over for both yesterday and today. And if at any point you require any technical support, we do have technical staff on standby ready to assist you. A tech support room is located in the Session tab. Just click on Session and scroll down to find the tech support room. Finally, if you're using social media, we invite you to use our hashtag ERD2020. And with that, I would like to now invite our first moderator to the virtual stage to introduce our first speakers. Viktoria Bodnarova is the regional representative for EURAXESS Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as outreach liaison for EURAXESS worldwide, connecting all of our hubs. She also happens to be my predecessor and is quite the expert on European research funding. Welcome, Viktoria.
Thank you very much, Jackson, for this nice introduction. Good morning to North America and good afternoon, good evening to Europe. Welcome to the European Funding Opportunities session. We have three amazing speakers, experts in the area, who are joining us all from Europe. I will shortly introduce them in the order of their presentation. Our first presentation will be about the Erasmus Plus program and will be given by Bruno Castro, who is an Erasmus Plus Policy Officer in the European Commission's Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. The second presentation on the Skłodowska-Curie Actions will be given by Dr. Branwen Hyde, who is a Senior European Advisor at the UK Research Office, but also one of the two Skłodowska-Curie Actions national contact points located in the UK. Last but not least, we are going to hear about the European Research Council grants from Dr. Martin Penny, who is the head of Unit for Physical Sciences and Engineering in the European Research Council Executive Agency. At this stage, I would like to give the floor to Bruno.
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me. I think it's okay. Thank you, Victoria, for the introduction. Thank you, Jackson. Bonjour, tout le monde. I'm going to conduct my presentation in English. I will talk about the international dimension of Erasmus+. And I'm having problems to share my screen. I don't know if someone from the organization can share my presentation on my behalf, because it's becoming unresponsive. My presentation, sorry for that. Hello. Well, I start talking anyway. So I work for the European Commission, and I am charged in the relations of the European Commission with North America and also Latin America. We mainly work in the field of higher education with our Erasmus Plus program. Erasmus Plus program has been working within Europe for more than 30 years. It's our flagship program. Thank you. I can see the slides now. So we stay there in the first slide. Thank you. It's a flagship program. It's a success story for international mobility of students within Europe, from European member states. It's so successful that now in European common language, you say going on Erasmus just to refer to any kind of international mobility. And since 2015, this program is open to the rest of the world. You can see that industrialized Americas, you are there, Canada. The focus of Erasmus Plus International is in the European neighborhood because of political reasons, but still there is a lot of this for Canadians. Please, next slide. So these are the data. Well, I was sharing the data of Canadian participants. Yes. So you think that in the last 6 years, more than 3,000 participants, Canadian or European participants got engaged in one of those mobilities from Europe or from Canada. And it's very important to highlight that this option of credit mobility is open for learners and for staff. There's a difference between number of projects and participants, because a project cooperation agreement between one Canadian and French university can have more or less numbers of participants. That's why the stats regarding the countries are different. So there are countries with a lot of projects, but maybe each of those projects involves less students or staff. Very quickly, three main, next slide please, three main higher education cooperation opportunities within Erasmus+. This is the academic mobility for students and for staff I was mentioning. There's also academic cooperation. I know some of the people in the audience today is also representing universities, so might be interested in academic cooperation in Jean Monnet. It's part of the actions we have for learning and research on European studies, but students cannot apply directly to this option, to Jean Monnet. And then we have the degree mobility, which is both for universities and both for students. We help the cooperation with the European universities to provide joint masters with a single diploma, and in parallel we also provide scholarships to students all around the world, including Canadians and students from the United States, to participate in those joint masters. Next slide please. I will start talking about the international credit mobility. Next again. So this is an option of short-term mobility between 3 and 12 months, students and PhD candidates, and staff can have a shorter stay between 5 and 60 days. Probably for students who are going next year, it will be lower. As from 2 months, you will be able to participate at any level, and these limitations apply to other countries, not for Canada. You can also do traineeships in European companies, or European students can do a traineeship in a Canadian company. So the interinstitutional project, the way it works, is the Canadian institution has to sign an agreement with the European institution. So all the paperwork is on behalf of the European universities. The European university apply for a grant, and the grant involves number of cooperation with countries all around the world. So one project approved for European universities can involve the Canadian universities from Kenya, from Australia, all around the world. Once you have this interinstitutional project approved and your European partner tells you that it's fine, that they have the money, you can exchange the students and the staff according to the interinstitutional agreement you signed earlier. So you have a number of participants, you have a target, the disciplines, and you can clarify the rules which will govern your agreement during the next 36 months. But of course, each of the mobilities will be shorter. Next slide, please. Each institution participant receives 350 euros per participant just for the administrative costs, but the participants, the students, get scholarships of 900 euros per month. Coming from Canada, it will be normally the highest one, and also contribution to travel cost, also from Canada, should be maybe the highest, or around 1,000 euros. This is per month. The staff participating, of course, gets comparatively more money, but this is 4 day, calculated per day and not per month. This is a contribution. It's not intended to be a full scholarship. So in some cases, if you are traveling to Norway, it's a country which is more expensive than Cyprus or Spain, but the contribution is roughly the same. Next slide. As I said before, the application is done at in the European countries, what we call the program countries, which are the EU member states, but plus 6 other associated countries. Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, North Macedonia, Turkey, and Serbia are also Erasmus program countries, and you can start an exchange with them. This is basic. Of course, I expect more questions, and well, you can always click on the links. I will put it in the chat if needed. The second category is the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters. Next slide, please. And the next one as well. These are study programs which happen to take place in different European countries. So if you are a student participating in these masters, you can have 1 semester in Spain, 1 semester in Latvia, for example, and a first semester in Serbia, and maybe a 4th semester doing research for the thesis or some traineeships, maybe even in Canada. So that's very interesting from the point of view of the students, because you also have the intercultural experience enhanced. The same promotion of students is traveling from one country to the other and then getting the best of the universities participating in the consortium. So the Erasmus Mundus Joint Master degrees are excellent, and they combine the strengths of the different universities participating. They are not normal masters that you will find under this category. They will be excellent, and as I said, complementing the strengths of each of them. It will be innovative master degrees. You are not going to study just law or international relations, but you will have a particular perspective and point of view. There are full scholarships for that, and also Canadian institutions can participate joining the consortia. They can participate by providing visiting scholars, helping in the design of the curriculum, or even receiving students for the whole semester, or just for traineeships, or for optative lessons, or to provide advisors for the thesis or for research. Next slide, please. The scholarships here are bigger, are higher. These are practically full scholarships. There are 2 flights involved. It's 1 extra month of installation, around 1,000 euros per month, and there are no matriculation fees. So the matriculation is already included in the scholarship. Next one, please. Next slide. So how to apply? There are more than 100 programs. The previous one, please. Yes. So please go to the catalog, Erasmus Mundus catalog. This is the right time of the year to start applying. And in this case, students, interested students, apply directly to the master. So you go to a catalog and you apply directly to the organizers of the master. In the previous option, International Credit Mobility, ENSE, is only for students who are already enrolled in a Canadian university. So they have to ask the Canadian university which are the opportunities, which are the international agreements they have under Erasmus+. In this case, there's no age limit. Even people who stopped studying 20 years ago can restart and apply directly to the program. So please go to the catalog. And next slide, very quickly, because I'm running out of time, just for institutions listening this presentation, I would like to inform them about Jean Monnet. Jean Monnet is an action under Erasmus+, which promotes teaching and research on European integration. Also at political level, we want Canadians to learn more about what the European Union is. We know it's a complicated structure, and we like to promote policy debate and exchange among scholars and students on the EU subjects. Next slide, please. when I talk about European studies, it doesn't mean just the European interinstitutional framework, the history of European integration, or EU law, or trade, which are the most obvious, but any kind of discipline or field involving EU can be eligible for Jean Monnet. So, for example, environmental rules, or phytosanitary rules, or trade, commercial agreements, anything with a comparative component related to the European Union can be eligible, and there are different kind of activities that your university or institution can apply to. So you can see different amounts and duration. Of course, the most selective are the Jean Monnet chairs. If you have a chair, it would be very prestigious. It would be the person who knows the most about the European Union in your university, but there are different lighter categories. So that's all about Erasmus Plus. In principle, for Canada, I invite you to check our website or to submit your questions in the chat. And good luck. Thank you very much for your interest. And thank you to the colleague who helped in the presentation.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for your presentation. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of questions a little bit later on during our Q&A session. I would like to now give the floor to Branwen to start her presentation on the Skłodowska-Curie Actions. Branwen, the floor is yours.
All right, just to say that my video is still blocked and I still can't share the screen either. The icon is blocked. Okay, that's up now. Sorry. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my slides now, and I wanted to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate today to talk about the Skłodowska-Curie Actions. And I'm going to be focusing on what's to come under Horizon Europe, so the next framework program, which would be the next set of calls that are opening, as the current calls that you might be familiar with under Horizon 20 have actually closed now, and those calls have all been completed, bar one, which is about public engagement. And I'm very excited to talk about Marie Curie because I think it's a really excellent scheme for sharing knowledge and development, and really that's what the fundamentals of Marie Curie are about. And the fundamentals of Marie Curie are really about people, about individuals, and about the organizations, and ensuring that researchers at all stages of their career and at all research domains have the ability to further develop their careers, develop and gain new knowledge and experience, and to encourage them to undergo mobility. They talk about the 3 I's. This is intersectoral, interdisciplinary, and international mobility. This is really at the heart of the various Marie Curie actions, which I will go through. And as I said, Marie Curie is really here for all research domains. It is completely bottom-up. And again, part of what they're trying to achieve is to really look at current and future societal challenges and how do we solve these from a scientific point of view. And I'm using science in kind of the more European sense, which is to cover, again, all disciplines, arts and humanities, all the way through to STEM. There's a very strong commitment to open science, responsible research, and again, a very strong commitment to promoting public outreach. And you will see this throughout all the schemes, a very strong component to actually engaging citizens and raising the profile of the research that is being done and funded throughout. And I guess the key thing to think about is often when we talk about Marie Curie, people think about, oh, it's for individual researchers, but the institutions to which those individuals are attached to, either through secondments or visits or through direct recruitment, are equally important with regards to Marie Curie action and play a fundamental role in shaping the training and that they are receiving and the exchange of knowledge. So going forward, there will be, for those who are familiar with Marie Curie now, there will still be 4 main schemes. It's just that their names are changing to make it easier for people who are less familiar with the schemes to actually engage with them better. So we'll have a Marie Curie doctorate, so doctoral training. We'll have post-doctoral fellowships, previously individual fellowships, which is often the scheme people think of most, particularly when they're thinking about Marie Curie. We'll also have staff exchanges in Co-Fund, and I'll be very quickly going through each of the four main actions that are presented here, and I'll also touch very briefly on MSCA and Citizens, which is the main scheme for promoting public outreach and engagement. The Makakiri doctorates, it's about supporting a network of organizations. Some of these organizations might directly recruit researchers who will then undertake a PhD, but there'll also be additional institutions that will have a crucial role in providing training and access to the necessary resources, be that archives or research infrastructures or entrepreneurial skills, or all the other elements that young researchers need today in order to be successful with their careers going forward. And these secondments, short visits, the training can actually happen anywhere in the world, and this is where this mobility element comes in. And also the individual researchers can be of any nationality, and they have very specific mobility requirements that they also need to fulfill. The idea behind the doctoral networks is, again, based on an identified scientific need and a scientific question that is developed by the consortium, and it's designed to deliver the skills of young people for what they will need to continue either in academia, or if they want to leave academia and go into other communities and non-academic sectors. Looking at boosting the research and innovation capacity and the internationalization and the attractiveness of those organizations involved, because through this they will be developing a very comprehensive and excellent research training program. The funding that is provided through this fully funds the recruitment of the researchers, and I use the word recruitment deliberately because though they are doctoral students, they will be recruited on a full employment contract and will be treated as staff. And as I mentioned, one of the ethos behind Marie Curie is people, and part of that is to ensure that they have very good working conditions, and within working conditions mean that they are properly remunerated and recognized for their research and for the skills that they have. So as part of the full recruitment, their full living allowance, i.e. their salary, is covered. They get additional support to enable them to be mobile. If they have a family, there's additional allowances. And this is on top of our research and training and networking budget, which is quite generous. And then as an institution, the institution also benefits by getting additional funding to help with their own management and indirect costs that they incur by actually hosting and recruiting a researcher. The projects then recruit the individual doctoral candidates, and as I said, those researchers can be of any nationality, but there are very important mobility rules. So one of the key things for an organization who might want to be involved is to think about, okay, actually what is the role that I am playing, particularly as an international country? Is it through training? Is it through providing access to researcher infrastructures or other types of kind of archival materials? But equally, if you've got young students that are coming through and you're wanting to build and to help to develop new and existing collaborations with European partners or partners further afield, then again, this is a way that you can do that by encouraging your students to go and join these networks when they're reaching that stage where they'd actually like to undertake postdoctoral, PhD research. I have to admit, if I had known about the Makakiri doctoral networks and their predecessor, the Innovative Training Networks, while I was doing my own PhD, I would have jumped on it. It's a really exciting opportunities for young researchers to really increase their breadth of knowledge and experience and exposure, which is crucial when you're a young researcher. The Marie Curie Post-Doctoral Fellowships, so this is what was previously known as the individual fellowships, and this is often what we tend to associate with Marie Curie. And this is to support postdoctoral researchers and their careers. And there's a strong emphasis on the exposure, not just within academia, but beyond, and thinking about what skills that they will need as their career develops. For an organization, it helps to increase your global attractiveness, your visibility, and your reputation. And again, very much like the doctoral programs, the funding is very generous and it fully supports the recruitment. Again, they will be employees and their research needs. Now, there's two different destinations within the doctoral fellowships, what you now call the European fellowship, so where a young researcher goes and spends a period of time for their fellowship, the duration of the fellowship in a European member state, or what is now called a global fellowship, which will be called the global destination, where they would be hosted primarily for the duration of the fellowship in an EU member state, but actually would spend 2 years outside, so it would be a 3-year fellowship, and they would spend 2 years in a third country. And we do have quite a few Makakiri fellows that actually, for the global fellowship destination, choose Canada as a destination. So this is a way that Canadian institutions can get involved. But again, from an institutional point of view and from individual researchers, if you're trying to build networks, again, it's an opportunity. If you've got collaborators in Europe and they have a young researcher, a postdoc who would like to gain experience, talking about maybe a global destination fellowship with them, where they could come and spend a few years with you working in your lab in Canada or elsewhere within North America, and then having that return phase back to Europe. Or again, you've got a young postdoc who is looking for the next stage, and then having those kind of discussions and using this as an individual researcher to help build your own profile and career, even from if you're more established. So it's not just for the young fellows that are on their way. One thing that's very important to understand for the postdoctoral fellowships is that the fellowship is actually not awarded to the individual researcher. It is actually awarded to their supervisor, their principal investigator based in the European member state. The application is based on excellence, that is excellence of the young researcher, excellence of their research project, excellence of the PI who will be hosting them, and of the host institution itself. And all those elements are evaluated by an international set of peer review evaluators against the individual needs of the researcher and the project. So a very comprehensive evaluation process which they undergo, all solely based on excellence, and again open to all research domains, from arts all the way through to more STEM subjects. The third kind of big Makakiri scheme is Makakiri Staff Exchanges, which is currently called Research and Innovation Staff Exchanges. And this supports, as the name says, the exchange of staff members between institutions. This could be an existing network, or it could be a new network that would like to be established through this funding scheme. It is based on an identified scientific need or question developed by the consortium, and it's designed to strengthen and broaden international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral collaborative networks. There is a requirement to involve third country participants in this scheme. It's a very iterative, lean, and flexible tool to support collaborative research and innovation projects, and again, all disciplines, and we see these types of projects in all sizes, from the very small groups of 3 and 4 up to large collaborations of kind of 20 plus. Really based on the scientific need identified as part of the proposal development. The idea is to increase research and transferable skills and competencies of those involved in the exchanges, enhance their networking and communication. And the really nice thing about the staff exchanges is not just limited to researchers, so technicians, administrators, they're also eligible to go on the exchanges and to take part in the networking and training events based on the scientific need of the project. So it's very open, not only in the discipline and the question, but also in who can be involved in terms of the secondments. And the secondments have a top-up funding that goes with them to help cover the costs of the secondment itself. Unfortunately, there is no funding through these for the salary. It is expected that you would only be sending people who are already on staff, so people that you already have on payroll, and they would continue to receive their normal salary while they're on the exchange. The fourth big scheme is Makakiri Co-Fund. As the name suggests, this is a co-funding mechanism to support new or existing either doctoral or postdoctoral programs. You can have a single beneficiary or multiple partners who are dedicated to recruiting the researchers, but in addition you also have these elements of what we call partner organizations who would provide training. They would then host visits, short stays, and even secondments. And again, those partner organizations can be located anywhere in the world based on the individual need of the individual projects. What's quite nice about Co-Fund and how it differs from the from the doctoral networks and the postdoctoral fellowships is that the consortium or the individual has an area that they might like to provide these opportunities, so a research discipline or maybe even a specific focus. But it's up to the researchers who then would be applying to be a part of the co-fund to develop their own research project as part of the application phase. And they need to be given that freedom and flexibility to actually come up with their own project. For the doctoral program, as part of the application, the consortium would actually identify the specific projects that they would want to be undertaken in order to achieve the scientific goals of the doctoral program itself. As with the doctoral program and the postdoctoral fellowships, they're looking to improve the employability and the career prospects of the recruited researchers, both within academia and beyond. And for the organization, it really does help to increase their attractiveness, their visibility, and the reputation of those organizations. Again, you'll have free reign on what the science would look like and what discipline. So it's really based on the need that you identify as the organizations who want to be involved. With all of these schemes, because mobility is such an important element, you see some very exciting young researchers who are very committed to research. You're asking them to move, and they're generally highly motivated and have very good credentials as well to bringing with them.
Branwen, can you please wrap up your presentation?
Yes, I've only got one slide left. Also, and then just to wrap up, as I mentioned, we've got the Makakiri Citizens, and what I wanted to highlight is actually the European Researchers' Night. So this is what Makakirian Citizens used to be called. And on Friday, in 29 different countries, we'll be celebrating all things European research. And there's a number of, all the events are free. The vast majority of them are online, and I really encourage you, if you have any interest in European funding or just in research in general, to check out the activities that will give you a really good sense of what is on offer for Makakiri, in terms of European funding and the exciting opportunities that it brings with it. And I just wanted to highlight one last thing, is that Makakiri are really devoted to increasing diversity and making sure that they have a wide range of participants and have a number of support mechanisms, such as the additional family allowance, supporting the return from career breaks, additional financial support for researchers who have additional special needs, and also allow for part-time working arrangements. And this is for both the doctoral and at the postdoctoral level, which is a nice addition, and has recently been brought in for the doctoral level. And that's everything that I had to say. Hopefully I've piqued your interest, if nothing else, to understand a bit more about what Makakiri has to offer, and I'm very happy to answer any questions either now or in the session later.
Thank you very much, Branwen, for your presentation. We are going to take the questions after the third presentation that will be done by Martin about the European Research Council grants that are aimed at even more experienced researchers. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Let me just share my slides. Hopefully you can see those now. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the opportunities from the European Research Council. And I know we've got a really varied audience today with researchers at all different areas of the research experience and research careers. And one of the nice things about the ERC is there's opportunities for all of you in the room. So for researchers who are at least 2 years after their PhD, we have direct funding opportunities. For those of you who are PhD students and postdocs, there are many opportunities to carry out PhDs and postdoc placements within ERC grants, and our colleagues from EURAXESS can direct you to those opportunities which are currently available. So let me give you some basics about the ERC. They are grants which are open to a researcher of any nationality for any field of research. They're long-term grants which are focused on high risk and high gain. The only requirement is that you need to spend at least 50% of your time in Europe on all of the grants. So let me give you an overview in this talk of what the basics of the ERC grants are. Those of you who want to know more details, I'll give this in the workshop session shortly. But one of the things which I want to highlight is the ERC is a very simple funding program. And why it's simple is it's set up and designed not by administrators like me, but by researchers like you. So it's a very different type of funding program. The Scientific Council are 21 prominent researchers who design exactly how the program is set up, how you apply, how the projects are evaluated, and once you've got a grant, what type of reporting needs to be put in place. And they've done that in a way that the program is as simple and as easy to follow for the researchers, so that you can spend your time doing your research rather than having to do admin. So these are the scientific councils. The current president in the top left-hand corner there, Professor Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, who is a French mathematician. But let me just highlight that, as Bram has already talked about, the ERC is part of the Horizon Europe, the framework programs of the European Commission, and you see we're there in the first pillar of the program alongside the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions that Bram just introduced to you. So let me take you through the funding schemes. The first one, starting grants. Those are designed for those of you who are 2 to 7 years after your PhD. So again, it's a night where you have an idea in any field of research, any nationality. The requirements are that you need to spend at least 50% of your time on the grant and 50% of your time working at a European host institution. The grants are up to €1.5 million over 5 years. So as you see, they're substantial funding grants, which allows you to establish your own research group, take on PhD students and postdocs, and really become established as a researcher, as an assistant professor or associate professor at a university or a research organization or any type of legal entity where you want to work within the European Union. The next grants are for those who are slightly more advanced in their career. We call them Consolidated Grants. So those of you who are 7 to 12 years after your PhD, here the requirement, again, 50% of your time in Europe, but because people at this stage of their career often have more things which they are busy with, either teaching work or they may have other research grants, then the requirement is only you spend up to 40%, the minimum of 40% of your time on the grant. The grant is slightly larger, up to €2 million, again, over 5 years. As you can imagine, the next grant is for those who are more experienced. So those of you who have a significant research achievement over the last 10 years. So this is the next stage of grant after starting and consolidated grants. Here, these are much more senior researchers, and because of that, whilst again 50% of the time has to be spent in Europe, but a minimum of 30% of your time has to be spent on the grant. Let me just highlight here for those of you who are already in established positions in Canada that this would allow, for example, a dual appointment. So those of you who are thinking of carrying out a 2 year sabbatical, for example, in Europe, this could easily be combined, which would allow you to have a substantial grant of up to €2.5 million over 5 years. Those of you who want to move full-time to Europe, of course, this is something which is suitable for you as well. In my talk this morning and also my talk right now and also in the workshop sessions later this morning, I'm going to focus on these individual funding schemes in particular. But there's one other funding scheme which I just want to highlight here, which is the Synergy Grant. This is not an individual grant like the others. This is a grant scheme for researchers working in synergy. It's not a collaborative grant. The idea is it brings together between 2 and 4 researchers to set up a research or implement a research program where they are mutually interdependent on each other. So the research could not be carried out unless they were working in synergy with this other researcher or 2 or 3 other researchers. The reason why I'm highlighting this to you is one of those researchers can be based outside of the European Union or the countries which are associated with the framework program. So for example, a Canadian researcher can apply alongside a European researcher and receive funding directly. So this is a major funding opportunity which is available to Canadian researchers. We haven't had a lot of applications from Canadian researchers, so I really want to highlight this one to you. The grants are up to €10 million over 6 years, and the requirements there that you spend a minimum of 30% of your time on the grant. European researchers need to spend at least 50% of the time in Europe. One of the researchers, as I said, can be based permanently outside of Europe. So in the workshop session later, I'll give you much more information on how you apply for all of these opportunities and the evaluation conditions. But one of the things which is clear is it's done to be as simple as possible. A minimum number of forms, because we all hate filling in forms. You know, whenever you're applying for funding, it's the things which all of you hate the most. The focus is on what we call the Part 1, B1 and the Part B2, where you set out your research idea in focus, in detail. We ask for that to be submitted in two sections, a self-standing synopsis proposal, which is the Part B1, together with the full proposal. And again, I'll give more details of this in my workshop session. As I said, all areas of research are covered. The grants are evaluated in Horizon Europe under 27 different evaluation panels. You see them here. These are just the ways in which we have divided research into a way in which we can evaluate it. Don't worry if you don't see your specific research area here. This is just a guidance to show where you could apply. So for example, if you work in an area which is multidisciplinary, for example, if you're a biophysicist, you may apply, for example, to the condensed matter physics panel. You may be applying to the molecules of life panel. Depends on which focus you want to give to your research. And I'll explain more of that in the workshop session later. So, in keeping with the simple nature of this program, there is just one evaluation criterion, which is the excellence of your research project and the excellence of you as a researcher. You don't evaluate the host criterion. There's none of these extra added evaluation criteria that you find often in funding programs in terms of the applicability of your research, the impact of your research. That's not there. It's just really, you want your best ideas and put those ideas in competition with each other. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to have a great idea. You need to design the research project to implement it. When you apply, you need to have a letter of support from the institution which wants to host you. You choose your panel, select some keywords and descriptors, and then write and submit your proposal. Simple as that. And I'll go through it in more detail later. So plenty of help available, as you see from here. And happy to take questions later when that comes to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, for your presentation. And I know that there is going to be a breakout session with you. So people that are interested in more depth to learn about the European Research Council grants can join it later on today. So we have a couple of questions. We have a couple of questions from the audience that I would like to address. The first one, I think, to take the elephant out of the room, so to speak, is a question that would be addressed to all three of you, and it's concerning the Brexit, of course. So our audience would like to know from all three programs whether the UK will be eligible after December 31st.
Who wants to go first? Shall I go first? Okay.
Yeah, I can follow.
This is this you're right. This is the elephant in the room, and you have British speakers in front of you as well. So there isn't a simple answer to this. In terms of the current programs, the UK's participation in all of the ongoing grants is foreseen in the withdrawal agreement. So that's already put in place. In terms of participation in the future programs, this is part of the ongoing negotiations. And so at this stage, it's a little difficult to be able to give an answer to that because you know the negotiations are ongoing as we're speaking right now in terms of how the UK's future relationship with the European Union will be. Research is part of that future relationship. So there is an opportunity, of course, for the UK to be associated in the same way that other countries who are not members of the European Union are associated. But this will be defined as part of the UK's future relationship. Maybe I should hand over to the speaker actually directly from the UK government, who could probably speak more on that.
So yes, thank you. So as Martin has clearly stated, for the current programs, the UK participation is covered by the terms of the withdrawal agreement, and that covers those projects for the lifetime of those projects. So even if the project was not to be awarded, if it was funded through the current multi-annual financial framework, so under Horizon 2020, and so the project was not awarded until later next year, so in 2021, and ran for 5 years because it's still under the current multi-annual financial framework, the UK participation in that call would be fully covered until the end of that call under the terms of the withdrawal agreement. The future programs, so under the UK's ability to participate under Horizon Europe will depend on the future negotiation, and the UK government has been very clear in the recently, well, it was published in the summer, R&D roadmap that they have the intention, and they're looking at association depending on what is provided and ensuring that it is a fair deal for both sides. So this is being looked at very carefully. If the UK does not associate, then they would be looking at other alternatives, domestic alternatives that would be able to support the UK's participation in those parts of the program that would be open to third country participation. For those that are interested, I can put the link to the R&D roadmap in the chat. It will just take me a couple of minutes to get it, and it clearly outlines the UK's intention with regards to association, and that's the key document that I would recommend that those who would all have questions would be interested in. Equally, if you'd like to know a little bit more in my presentation, there's a link to my direct email address, and I am happy to pick this up with you outside of this forum.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Bruno, would you like to add anything to the topic of Brexit and Erasmus+?
Yes, well, as my colleague said, we don't know much. We are in negotiations, but some of the agreements or projects already approved in the last years involving the United Kingdom are still valid. The Erasmus Plus normally would be until 2022. So if partner country university, a Canadian university, already has an agreement with a British university, still until that date, the changes can take place. So you just need to ask at your university the validity of those agreements.
Perfect, thank you very much. And we will stay with you, Bruno. I have a question here from the audience asking, as you mentioned in your presentation, Canada is an external part to Erasmus Plus now. But if a Canadian institution signs an agreement with an EU member state institution, can they still participate in the Erasmus Plus program?
Yes, they can participate as what we call the partner country. We have program countries in Europe and the partner countries all around the world. This means that only few of the options that Erasmus Plus offers are available, the 3 options I presented, whilst for European countries there are many others, and also that the burden of the red tape and the administration falls into the European partners. So that's the good news for Canadians. They just need to find a European partner who will be in charge of that.
Thank you very much, Bruno. I would like to turn now to Brandwen, a question about the Marie Curie. Are researchers working for government research institutions eligible for MSCA funding?
So there's no limit on who would or would not be eligible for funding in the sense of the organizations, provided that they are a legal entity and they have the capacity to support and undertake the research. There are some, wouldn't say limits on who can get funding, but you do, on terms of the eligibility rules and with relationship to the mobility for those international organizations or European research organizations who have a special status. There's some things that you just need to work out with regards to the eligibility. There's also some questions for researchers coming from areas into Europe that have issues with embargoes. But otherwise, there's no limits on the researchers themselves or the organization's ability to participate in the schemes.
Thank you very much. And we will stay with you. Can a Canadian university be co-applicant for MSCA Co-Fund?
So as I said, Horizon Europe is up and coming. So this is the next framework program, and some of the fine details for the rules, particularly with regards to third country participation, have yet to be formally published and made publicly available. As it stands under Horizon 2020, we have projects where you do have partner organizations who do recruit, who are based in third countries, provided that they bring all of their own funding, so they would not be eligible for the European the EC contribution. But we do have that under Horizon 2020, and we would hope that that would be the same under Horizon Europe. But there's also some additional elements under Horizon Europe that are new to promote more of the global destination fellowships, and also with regards to encouraging secondments and having more secondments in international organizations. So there's a few changes, but positive changes with regards to international participation.
Thank you, Bramwyn. And we have a very important question that you haven't mentioned in your presentation. When do you expect the next call for applications for MSCA to open?
Okay, this is a bit of a difficult question to answer because the framework program is still undergoing negotiation, has not been formalized yet. The expectation is that the work program, so this is the documentation where the calls are announced and all the details are finalized and published in, would be out by the spring, and that the calls would start to open immediately thereafter. So depending on the call that you would be interested in, you might find that the call would open actually in April 2021. That's proposed call open date for some of the calls, with a close date in September, but other ones would not be looking into opening until September 21. And these are still provisional dates. So unfortunately, I cannot give any hard and fast answers to that. But again, if people are interested, we can kind of have a look and make sure that if we keep in touch, then I can let them know when changes come out.
Thank you very much. And of course, if you sign up to the EURAXESS North America mailing list, you will receive also this information as soon as it becomes official and available. Now I would like to turn to Martin to answer a couple of questions. We are not going to leave you out, don't worry. So we have a question about the starting grants. Does the 2 to 7 years past your PhD mean that new PhDs cannot apply?
So basically, this is people who have some experience after their PhD already. So it's a minimum of 2 years after your PhD, maximum of 7. Actually, the eligibility periods can be extended a little bit more for example, if you've had children or you've had taken time off because you've been ill. There's a whole range of ways in which they can be extended. But actually, the minimum requirement is 2 years after your PhD. The idea is these are not postdoctoral fellowships. This is really about setting up your own research group. And so they're not targeted for people who are immediately after their PhD. This is really, once you've got the experience of being able to take on PhD students yourself and postdocs yourself. And so it's not designed for people immediately after their PhD directly.
Thank you very much, Martin. We'll continue with another question for you. Someone asks if the ERC fund can be used for course buyout to release more time for research to meet the ERC time requirement.
I mean, this is the arrangements that you would have in terms of your host institution. You can use the ERC grant to pay for your salary. That would then mean that if you already have a full-time position within your institution, they don't need to pay you directly. So although we wouldn't pay from our grant buyout, effectively you organize it with the organization, you put the best conditions in place with the organization who's employing you. So it's one of the nice things and the flexible nature of the grants is they can be used your own salary as well as the salaries of the people you're taking on, any equipment that you need, any consumables that you need, the travel that you need. I mean, they're really designed to be as flexible as possible. And I think this is quite important for starting grantees. We see that most starting grantees, when they apply, they haven't got a full-time position. So actually they are applying as part of their grant to have their salary paid as part of their grant. That's normal. What we find is once they've been offered a grant, usually they've got job offers from many different organizations, often a different one to the one they applied for. And through that, they then no longer need to apply they no longer need to cover their salary through their grant. We don't reduce the grant amount. It means that instead they can maybe take on another postdoc or some more PhD students. So this is really part of the flexibility of the grants and the beauty of having a scheme designed by researchers like the audience rather than bureaucrats like me.
Thank you very much. I have another question for you, Martin. What are the candidate experience requirements to qualify for PI funding in ERC?
Okay, in terms of experience requirements, I mean, this is really looking at your experience after your PhD. So as I said, for starting grantees, it's 2 to 7 years after your PhD. And so that's the experience that's needed. And so it could be that you carried out work as a postdoc, you may have actually gone into industry and want to come back and do something different. The experience doesn't matter. It's just that we have this time after your PhD. Actually, one of the things I want to highlight is a lot of people wait until the end of the 7-year period before they think they're ready to apply. We actually see no difference in success rate at all from people who are 2 years after their PhD to people who are 7 years after their PhD. So there's no other direct experience requirements other than this time to have, at least 2 years after your PhD, to have thought of this great idea and then write the proposal.
Thank you very much, Martin. And I have one of the last questions as sort of a follow-up question for Bronwyn. Please, there was someone who did not quite understand the Co-Fund scheme. So they are asking, with the current Horizon 2020 rules, do Canadian universities need to have their own funding to take part to MSCA Co-Fund, or could they have access to the EU funds?
So for third countries are unfortunately not eligible for the EC contributions for the European Commission contribution funding that's provided through the co-fund mechanism. So they would need to provide 100% of the funding.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And with that, we cannot take, unfortunately, more questions because we are running out of the time. Before I thank all of you, I would like to mention that all 3 programs, including Erasmus+, Marie Skłodowska-Curie, and the European Research Council grants, are going to continue under the next framework program for research and innovation of the European Union, which is called Horizon Europe, and will start in 2021 for the period of 7 years. So will end in 2027. So the good news is that all these mobility programs for individual researchers are going to be part of the big program, and you all from Canada or from around the world, no matter what nationality you hold, will be able to participate in them. So with that, I would like to thank to all our speakers, Bruno, Bronwyn, and Martin, for your time to connect from late, almost night in Europe, and to talk to our audience today. Thank you so much for all of the attendees that joined us for the session today. And again, just to say that we'll have special breakout sessions for Marie Curie and ERC for those that are interested. And with this, I would like to pass on the floor to Jackson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.